Welcome to another episode of BeerTv, where we give you the cold hard facts. Today we have a special episode. We're at Chino Valley Brewing Company with head brewer Matt.
Thanks for coming out, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks
Pleasure.
for being out here. Thank you.
So today we're going to be reviewing the Nightmare Double IPA by, again, Chino Valley Brewing. But why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what went into that?
Sure. Well, this IPA was the first IPA we produced here at this brewery. We want to do something different, so we decided to do a double, and we decided to make it a black IPA because I personally enjoy black IPAs, and I feel they're different. I don't know of anybody in this area that makes a double black IPA. For us, the challenge was, of course, striking the right balance between the hops and the bitterness and the maltiness. I don't like IPAs that are overly sweet, and sometimes you can get that with a double IPA. This particular IPA, it really, in my opinion, hit the perfect balance, and while also pulling off a very low roast flavor, because sometimes these black IPAs, there's a lot of roastiness in them, and I don't care for that type of flavor. So this one came out just the way we wanted, and it even in many ways exceeded our expectations, so we were happy with it.
Well, I'm excited to try it. And that's a bold start for an IPA, because you get those breweries that start up and they're, we're gonna make it easy. We're gonna do a regular IPA, cater to the masses. No, go big or go home. Get that double black IPA.
Now let's get to pouring this beer.
And the reason we use tulip glasses with this beer is the shape of the glass helps the aroma be noticed more and helps the beautiful smells that come through in the effervescence to be noticed. And then also, it's a smaller glass, which encourages responsible drinking and helps us with our portion control.
And now that we've poured these beers, let's go ahead and get into aroma. It's going to be out of 12. Devin, what are you getting?
I'm getting some dark roasted malts. They're predominant in this beer, along with some hops and some bittersweet chocolate. What are you getting, Spence?
Lots of hops. I don't know. Being an IPA guy, I guess I'm looking for the hops. So pretty heavy hop presence. What do you think, Matt?
Well, this is an 80 IBU beer, so there's definitely a lot of hops in it. I do multiple hop additions, and I try to use very aromatic hops in a beer like this, and I think that the aroma, the earthiness, the spiciness comes through really well.
I just smelled it again. I'm getting some faint undertones of almost like dark fruit along the lines of raisins or dates. Is that, am I off on that?
No, you're not. We use a few specialty grains in this that often produce a burnt raisin, burnt date type of flavor profile,
Okay.
and that does come through very subtly in this beer.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, before we get to scoring, I just wanted to mention that this is a black IPA. It's also known as an American Dark Ale or a Cascadian Dark Ale in some of the, when they judge it in like the tournaments, the champions, whatever. But let's move on to out of 12. What do you think, Devin?
I'm gonna give it 11. Loved it. It was complex enough. It wasn't just hops and dark malt. I mean that's too black and white. Like it had complexities to it. It enticed the aroma. I was impressed by it. 11 out of 12 for me.
I really like it. I've had a few black IPAs, and so far this one's measuring up to some of the bigger black IPAs from the bigger breweries that I've had. So I'm gonna give it a 10.
Now moving on to the appearance of the beer, where we look at a little bit of the lacing, the head retention, and the color. Spence, dive on in.
Well, starting from top to bottom, we have the head is a kind of a coffee, dark tan, mocha frappuccino, lots of micro bubbles, and very, very dark. Like this is pitch black. You can't see through this at all. Sometimes with some of the darker beers, you get kind of like a reddish on the side, and there's none of that here.
Yeah, it is completely pitched. It'd be that 40 and up on that SRM scale. And I noticed there isn't a lot of like macro bubbles, large bubbles. There's a lot of micro bubbles. Why is there a lot of micro bubbles in this beer?
This particular beer, we keep it under pressure for at least 3 weeks before we serve it. The longer it conditions and the longer it's under about 2 volumes of pressure, you will start to get more of the little micro bubble buildup in it,
Oh, wow.
and that's where that comes from.
Like it.
Yeah.
Lacing, a ton of lacing on this beer. The micro bubbles really grip to the side of that beer, and there's, for appearance, I give it a 3 out of 3. There's nothing that says it's wrong with this beer.
This looks great, and it looks like a lot of the other black IPAs I've had, and so I'm gonna give it a 3 as well. Now, moving on to taste, that's gonna be out of 20, and definitely my personal favorite part.
That is where you find the 80 IBUs. They were a little bit aromatic in the nose, but the 80 IBUs jumps out in the flavor. This is where you find out why it's called a black IPA.
And this is wonderful straight out of the tap. Just a little side note, but definitely a lot of hops, a lot of bitterness, but it's kind of weird. I've had beers where really high IBUs, but not a lot of hop flavor. It was just bitter, and that was, that's kind of gross, but this, I really like the flavor of the hops in this one as well. They complement the IBUs a lot to the point where, I mean, my palate could just be dead from all the IPAs I've drank, but the IBUs aren't overwhelming at all. 80 IBUs sounds like a lot, but it's not in this one.
And I'm getting a bit of the nose, and what it promised in the nose, what I'm saying, is it delivered in the flavor. Last thing you want is a beer that, it smells like roasted malt, it smells a little bit of coffee and chocolate, and you get to the beer and it's like wheat.
Yeah.
You just lied to me. You got my hopes up for nothing. This beer delivers, and I'm glad it does. I'm still getting that roasted grain in there in the malt. I'm getting a little bit of that bitter chocolate and really light tones of coffee, really undertones of coffee, a little bitter coffee though. You getting anything different at all, Spence?
No, Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got the IBUs that high?
Well, we have to use, first we have to use, as you pointed out, hops that complement each other. That's the hardest part, because you can get the IBUs by doing simple math, but the perception of the hops on the palate to get the flavor you're talking about is a completely different animal. So we don't have the smell and the sharp bitterness in the front, and then no lasting flavor. So I can tell you we use hops that have a lot of flavor, and we use them in such a way that they could complement each other and not only hit you with the bitterness up front, but stay in the palate through the drink and come out perceptually as flavor. So that was the trick with this beer.
And you mentioned the hops kind of going through, just kind of maybe think about it. The hops lasting throughout the beer, it does finish as that IPA. You still have that traditional bitter, long finish that's there, but with a little more of that roasted malt and grain aspect. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a 17 out of 20. I enjoyed this. And Spencer's laughing, so I can only imagine.
Yeah, Devin and I tend to score beers pretty closely, and I already knew what I was going to score the taste. Like, as soon as it hit my tongue, I scored it, and Devin happened to steal my score.
Agree with.
I'm also giving it a 17.
Now on to the mouthfeel of the beer, where we're looking at how it feels in your mouth. Hit it.
Lots of carbonation in this, and a really long finish, which is, normal for an IPA, which is good, staying within the category. But one thing that sort of threw me off is there's a lot of micro bubbles in here, and I thought that would imply some, smoothness. But this has a pretty heavy bite for, it's carbonated, just like an IPA should be. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how the bubbles and...
The bubbles we have here are just from it conditioning as long as it has under the proper volume, and it gives you that nice, it does give you a little bit of smoothness. And I know we were talking earlier and you'd mentioned this as opposed to something with nitrogen in it. And I can tell you that of course there's no nitrogen in this beer, but you do get a little bit of a look of like a cask beer with it because of how it's been conditioned. And the reason we use nitrogen on other beers nowadays is to mimic that cask look, that cask aged beer look. Because when you pour cask beer, it is naturally carbonated, and when you pour it, it actually looks like the modern day nitrogen beer with a cascading. And per our conversation a little bit earlier, that's what you're talking about. This is nothing like that. It's just naturally formed, and it actually does add a little bit of smoothness. Longer conditioning is going to give you those micro bubbles in modern day beers like this.
Alrighty.
I do like that carbonated bite that it has, that presents that IPA. And if it didn't have that bite, it'd be more towards that black stout category. And it's like, okay, you just made a hopped up stout. Good for you. But that has the carbonation in there. It does say this is a perfect blend between a 50-50 of a stout and that IPA.
And I'm going to interject just real quick, just so
Yeah.
you know, we really made an effort to cut down as much as possible on the roasty flavor, just because for that reason, I didn't want it to be confused with a stout that was hopped up exactly. So we chose a grain that specifically would give us the least amount of roast possible, but in black IPAs, you're always going to have, you know, a little bit of roastiness. Yeah, it was just right in this beer.
What do you give it, Spence?
You know, as far as the mouthfeel goes with the carbonation, the finish, I think it was perfectly, is a perfect example of this category, of that black IPA category, and I'm gonna give it a 5.
I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I liked it. Now moving on to the overall impression of the beer, which would be out of 10, where you kind of give your own personal opinion on what you liked, what you changed, how you kind of make this your own brew.
You know, for me, I really liked it as a black IPA. Part of what you want in a double black IPA, or you know, a double IPA, some of those bigger beers, some people are looking for a bit more alcohol in it, kind of, you know.
Mhm.
So for 7.6, that's pretty heavy. Like that's big. I think I would maybe try and raise the alcohol a little bit, because this has enough flavor that it could handle it with the carbonation, with the hops and the stout aspects, you know, complementing each other. I think you could raise the alcohol in this a little bit to and get away with it. You know,
Yeah.
You wouldn't get too much of a booziness in it.
I really liked how it took the IPA's best qualities of the hops and the CO2 and the stout's best qualities. I feel like the IPA is a strong beer, especially when you make it a double. It has that power to overwhelm anything, even your food, let alone if you mix it with something else, in this case, a stout. I feel if we added a little bit more of a coffee or chocolate aspect to that stout, it'd make it a little bit more balanced and it'd make it a little more sweet. I'm not sure you want a sweet IPA, but it'd be interesting to see what that would do. And if you had a nitrogen as well, that'd be cool too. I'm not sure if that would lean it more towards that stout style, and you're like, okay, you made it nitro, you took out the carbonation, there's no bite, now you just made a hopped up stout. I'm not sure if that's what it tastes like, but it'd be cool to see if there was a little bit more bittersweet chocolate or some coffee beans in there, to see if that, maybe even vanilla. That'd be a weird kind of spin on it, like maybe an oak. I changed my mind. As soon as I said that, it doesn't sound good. So I'm going to stick with chocolate. Chocolate and coffee.
You make one and let me know how it tastes.
I will. That's going to be me specifically. For overall impressions, I'm going to give this beer 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8 too. No, you said that, and I thought that's the score I wanted.
Yeah.
That's a good score.
Just we agree here at BeerTv.
Yeah. So we both give it an 8 for overall impression.
Now moving on to the pairing aspect of this beer, it is going to have some difficulties. It does have characteristics of a stout and characteristics of an IPA. You can't simply just pair the IPA aspect and get, say, spicy buffalo wings, and you can't get a pairing for like a chocolate and just say, oh, that's going to pair with the stout. You kind of have to mix both worlds together. Don't tell me you're going to put chocolate on buffalo wings, because that's nasty. That's not going to work. You have to pair it as a single unit. So, Spence, something along
Yeah,
those lines.
moving on. Something like a black IPA is automatically going to be really big, high alcohol, lots of flavor. You can't just passively drink this beer. You know, you're not like you're going to go fishing on the lake and knock a few of these back. This demands your attention, and because of that, it either needs a pairing that can match it. So a really, really big dish with a lot of flavor as well to keep up with the beer, or the exact opposite, something, you know, a kind of a cut or a something that is just passive, that's just in your mouth basically. So
some examples along the lines of that, you could do aged Gouda cheese. That's gonna have a really strong flavor that's gonna stand up to the boldness of this beer. You can also pair it with some chocolate truffles or some seafood like shrimp. Just put a little bit of spices on there. And as a matter of fact, today our CEO cooked up and will present today one of the pairings for what he's gonna pair with this Nightmare Double Black IPA.
All right, so today what I have for these guys is we have pork chops. And what we did is we put some honey barbecue sauce on it along with some cayenne pepper. Now, the reason that we did that is because the sweet honey barbecue sauce in it is going to pair well with the sweetness of the stout aspects you get in a double black IPA. The spiciness that we use from the cayenne pepper and a little bit of black pepper as well is going to pair well with the IPA side of the beer with the CO2 aspect and whatnot. Also, the fattiness of the pork is going to go really well. So I'm going to let these guys dig in, and they're going to let you know how well it is.
These look amazing. Put some bites in here. Have a bite right there. Steal that one,
Thank
man.
you.
You're the.
Give that a shot.
Yeah. The chewing part of the show.
That's really good. What you were saying, what Connor was saying about the meat was true. I really like the spiciness kind of brought out a lot of the hop flavor. Whereas before it was, you know, drinking. The hops were there. This brought it out so much more. That paired really well. Devin, what do you think?
The fat in the pork chop makes this beer even more easy drinking and smooth. And I don't want to say easy drinking because it's high IBU and high ABV, which it is, but it's just easy drinking. It goes so well together. The sweetness and that honey barbecue goes with that roasted toasted malt in this black IPA, while the little bit of spice provided with the cayenne pepper just hops up with the beer, and it just pairs perfectly with the hops in that.
You know, I agree with that. The fattiness of the meat really makes it smooth. You know, that marbling smooths it out, and the cayenne really complements the hops. Yeah, real nice. That was excellent.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us at Chino Valley Brewing Company's for Nightmare Double Black IPA. Cheers.
Cheers.